Imagine that on September 11th, 2001, the entire world watched in astonishment as the Twin Towers collapsed in New York. But what if I told you that the official version of what happened on that fateful day isn't everything you think? What if, behind the curtain of the global narrative, there were secrets and evidence that could change the way we see the world? In today's video, we're going to explore the conspiracy theory behind September 11th, questioning the truth we've been told. But before we go on this journey of discovery, I need your help. If you're already intrigued and want to know more, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment. Share your opinion or question, and together we'll explore these theories that the world tries to hide. Now imagine the global impact, the loss of thousands of lives and the emergence of a new world after that day. But was everything really as they say? Independent investigations and experts from around the world have raised questions that we cannot ignore. Are there flaws in the evidence presented? Information may have been manipulated to hide a reality that few dare to explore. The official version of the story is clear. Two planes hijacked by terrorists crash into the Twin Towers, resulting in a catastrophic disaster. But as the years have passed, theories have emerged that question the authenticity of this narrative. The famous question that many ask, has the truth never been revealed? Some of these claim that the attack was, in fact, orchestrated by forces other than the terrorists who supposedly planned the attacks. Time has passed, and revelations about the construction of the towers, the flaws in the security system, and the inconsistencies in the investigation have created a series of unanswered questions. This is where the conspiracy begins to gain traction. What have we not been told about 9/11s? Now let's delve deeper into the doubts that arose from the collapse of the twin. According to the official version, the planes hit the buildings, causing the structures to collapse due to fire. However, many engineering and architecture experts have disputed this explanation, stating that a fire, even so intense, could not have been enough to bring down the skyscrapers so quickly and symmetrically. The most discussed theory among conspiracy theorists suggests that the Twin Towers were destroyed by a controlled demolition. What does this mean? The idea is that explosives were placed in the structures of the buildings, which would have caused the collapse of the towers in a planned manner. Not just as a result of the impact of the planes, but how can we say this? Security camera footage and testimonies from survivors have revealed something strange. Explosions were heard before the towers collapsed. In addition, the rubble of the buildings burned for weeks on end, an atypical situation for a commercial airplane fire. But what is even more intriguing is the fact that the towers had recently been reinforced to withstand aircraft strikes. So how could a simple attack be so destructive? This has left many wondering whether there was more internal involvement than the official version suggests. Furthermore, if controlled demolition were a possibility, many believe that those responsible for placing the explosives were already on site well before the attack. This raises a number of questions about who was really behind this planning. Who would benefit from the chaos generated by this global event? What would they gain from destroying the towers? While the world was in shock over the attacks on the Twin Towers, another crucial incident occurred at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. American Airlines Flight 77, which was also hijacked by terrorists, crashed into the Pentagon building. But the circumstances of this attack have raised even more questions. especially given the lack of concrete evidence of what really happened that day. One of the biggest controversies is over what type of plane hit the Pentagon. Witnesses claim to have seen a smaller plane, while the official version tells us that a Boeing 757 was responsible for the impact. The question that remains is, if a large plane hit the Pentagon, why weren't more parts of the plane, such as the fuselage or wings, found? What would be expected in an accident of this magnitude would be debris scattered all over the area, but the scene at the Pentagon was surprisingly clean. Furthermore, the lack of security camera footage that captured the moment of impact has also given rise to speculation. The Department of Defense, which has security cameras throughout the complex, has only released a small portion of the footage, and it only shows a blur at the moment of impact. This has led many to question why the full footage was not released, especially considering the magnitude of the event and the strategic location of the attack. Another point that is often raised by conspiracy theories is the fact that while the press was intensely covering the attacks on the Twin Towers, the Pentagon seemed to have a different approach. There was no live coverage of the moment of impact or the immediate aftermath, which further fueled the idea that there was something to be hidden in the scenario. These inconsistencies about the Pentagon attack, coupled with the fact that the plane was allegedly being followed by military fighter jets, but did not intervene in time to prevent the collision, suggest that the Pentagon attack may have been part of a larger and more complex plan than we imagined. United Airlines Flight 93 is another crucial component in what many believe to be a 9/11 conspiracy. This plane, which was also hijacked, never reached its original target, which was believed to be the White House or the Capitol. Instead, it crashed in a field in Pennsylvania after some passengers tried to resist. The official narrative tells us that the passengers, upon learning that they were being hijacked and that the other planes had been used as missiles, decided to fight back against the hijackers, which led to the plane crashing and crashing. However, this version does not convince everyone, as the crash site seemed strange, and the lack of a typical impact from a commercial airliner has also raised doubts. Authorities said they did not find any significant wreckage from the plane, but what has caught the attention of experts and skeptics alike is the amount of artifacts left at the scene. Some argue that Flight 93 may have been shot down by military fighter jets, and that the story of the heroic passengers was created to divert attention from something much more serious, such as a possible military interception of the flight. In addition, the recovery of the black boxes from Flight 93, which appeared to be in good condition, has raised another question. How could a plane that fell from such a height and such a brutal impact have its flight records recovered intact? This has led to further questions about the transparency and veracity of the investigation. Many believe that the crash of Flight 93 was not an accident, but rather a theatrical performance to give the public the impression that the passengers had acted heroically, when the real control of the situation could have been exercised by the authorities more directly. Every major tragedy has its consequences, and 9/11 was no different. But what many people don't realize is that events like this can be used to reconfigure global geopolitical power and benefit certain groups or interests. The invasion of Afghanistan, for example, was one of the first military actions after the attack, justified by the claim that the Taliban regime was harboring Osama bin Laden, the alleged mastermind behind the attacks. However, many analysts question the real motivation behind the war in Afghanistan and the subsequent invasion of Iraq. According to some conspiracy theories, 9/11 was a pretext to manipulate public opinion and allow major powers to engage in lucrative wars in search of oil, natural resources, and military contracts. But it's not just about oil. The construction of a global surveillance state also intensified after 9/11. The Patriot Act, for example, gave the U.S. government unprecedented powers to monitor and control citizens' communications. This raises a fundamental question. To what extent were individual freedoms sacrificed in the name? In addition, the increase in defense contracts and the expansion of large corporations linked to the military industry demonstrate the economic impact that 9/11 had. Some suggest that, for certain groups, the 2001 tragedy was a strategic event that guaranteed profits and further consolidated the control of global powers. What lies behind these vested interests? Was 9/11 really the terror attack that we were told it was? Or was it an event orchestrated to redefine the course of in shaping how 9/11 was perceived worldwide? The images of the Twin Towers being hit by planes and collapsing within hours were broadcast live to millions of people around the world. The coverage was intense and relentless, but what many fail to realize is how the media shaped the narrative surrounding the attacks in ways that could have benefited certain interests, rather than simply reporting on the events. In the immediate aftermath of the attacks, TV, networks, and news outlets were filled with experts and analysts who confirmed the official version of events. However, few of these analyses questioned the plausibility of the events or raised doubts about the inconsistencies in the evidence presented. Instead, the dominant narrative was one of shock and outrage, with few daring to suggest that there was more to the attacks. The issue of coverage also extends to the fact that in the months following 9/11, there was little or no space in the media for discussions of conspiracy theories. These viewpoints were quickly discredited and labeled as extreme or radical. This raises the question, why was a single narrative imposed without allowing legitimate space for questioning or alternative investigations? Is there a reason behind this control of information? It is important to remember that in moments of great crisis, such as 9/11, official narratives are essential to give the public a sense of security and understanding. However, when questions begin to be asked about the flaws in the story being told, how do governments and corporations deal with these doubts? Censorship and control of information can be strategies to protect certain interests or to prevent the truth about what happened from being revealed to the public. Over the years, evidence that began to emerge that challenged the official version was largely ignored by the mainstream media. This has led to growing distrust among people who have begun to question the veracity of what they have been told. Many have asked themselves, did the media play an active role in hiding or distorting the truth about 9/11? Over the past 2 decades, several conspiracy theories about 9/11 have emerged and continue to fuel heated debates around the world. Some of them suggest that the attack was an internal operation by the United States government. Others claim that it was a pretext to launch a series of military interventions in the Middle East, and there are even those who claim that it was all just a big hoax orchestrated by global powers to create a new geopolitical scenario. Conspiracy theories, however, should not be seen as simple, unfounded speculation. Several scholars and experts in various fields have dedicated themselves to investigating the flaws and inconsistencies in what was officially released. From engineers who questioned the fall of the Twin Towers to former government employees who, years later, began to reveal disturbing information, the search for the truth continues to be a collective effort. The main question that arises with the popularity of these theories is the transparency of information. Why, after so many years, are there still so many questions without definitive answers? Why do certain aspects of the event, such as the lack of a clear and transparent trial, continue to be ignored? People who question the official version of 9/11 are not just looking for a villain or a simple explanation. They want to understand the flaws in the system and find the truth that has been obscured by the dominant narrative. In a scenario of constant information manipulation, the search for answers becomes a journey of challenging the status quo. The question remains, what are we not being told about 9/11s, and why is it so difficult for authorities and the media to address the inconsistencies openly? The main issue that arises with the popularity of these theories is the transparency of information. Why, after so many years, are there still so many questions without definitive answers? Why do certain aspects of the event, such as the lack of a clear and transparent trial, continue to be ignored? People who question the official version of 9/11 are not just looking for a villain or a simple explanation. They want to understand the flaws in the system and find the truth that has been obscured by the dominant narrative. The impact of 9/11 was not limited to that tragic day, but reverberated through years of political, social, and cultural change. The attack served as a catalyst for a series of new national security policies, including the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, and the implementation of mass surveillance measures, such as the monitoring of communications by the NSA. These changes, often seen as necessary to protect citizens, also led to a significant increase in the loss of privacy and individual freedoms, as more people began to question the motives behind government power. A growing portion of the population began to wonder whether 9/11 was really necessary to justify such measures or whether there were other objectives at play. Furthermore, the idea of an invisible enemy, a global threat posed by Islamic terrorists, has become a central narrative in the foreign policy of the United States and other Western countries. This has made it easier to justify military interventions in countries like Afghanistan and Iraq, but it has also fueled an environment of fear and suspicion in many societies that persist to this day. As the world seems to be in a constant state of surveillance, suspicion about the true origins of events like 9/11 continues to grow. Unanswered questions continue to challenge those seeking the truth, and the fight for transparency has not yet been won. Like all great conspiracy theories, the story of 9/11 is never completely solved. Despite the hundreds of books, documentaries, and debates that have emerged in recent years, the mystery remains. What we do know is that 9/11 was not just an attack, but a watershed event, an event that altered history, the fate of millions of people, and the way the world responds to global crises. The 9/11 conspiracy theory will continue to evolve as new information becomes available, and over time the truth may become more elusive. But most importantly, the questions continue to be asked, and the answers are still far from clear. If there is one thing we can learn from the events of that day, It is that the search for truth is essential, and we should never accept the official version without first questioning it. The collapse of the Twin Towers is undoubtedly one of the most discussed and controversial events of 9/11. The official explanation, according to which the impact of the planes and the subsequent fires caused the collapse of the buildings, is widely accepted, but it is also one of the areas most analyzed by conspiracy theorists. One of the biggest points of contention is the fact that the construction of the Twin Towers was designed to withstand the impact of a commercial airliner, which raises doubts about the veracity of the official version. Structural engineering experts, such as architect and civil engineer Richard Gage, founder of the group Architects and Engineers for the Truth of 9/11, argue that the collapse of the towers could not have occurred as quickly and symmetrically as it did. The destruction of the towers has been described as a free fall, a term used to describe the instantaneous collapse, which, according to theorists, cannot be explained by the damage caused by the planes alone. They suggest that the dynamics of a controlled collapse, the same as those used in building implosions, could have been applied. The theory that the Twin Towers were destroyed by explosives is a central theme of these theories. Witnesses at the scene reported hearing multiple explosions before the buildings fell, and some claim to have seen smoke and flames coming from floors below the impact sites. Evidence of dust spray that spread for miles around the site was also indicative of mass destruction, which may have been exacerbated by internal explosives. For many, the fact that the buildings fell so quickly and cleanly is evidence that something more happened besides the impact of the planes. Another point of controversy is the temperature of the fires. The official version claims that the fires caused by the jet fuel and the materials on the affected floors were intense enough to melt the steel structures, resulting in the collapse. However, some experts question this theory, arguing that the steel in the towers could not have melted at the temperatures caused by the jet fuel, since these fires did not reach temperatures high enough to melt the metal. These gaps in the official narrative raise even more questions about what really happened that day. The fact that the event was broadcast live and in detail with few interruptions and a ready-made narrative suggests that for some people there was an already established explanation for what happened, an explanation that may not have been complete or fully transparent. And it is precisely this kind of inconsistency that fuels conspiracy theories. Behind any major historical event, especially one as significant as 9/11, there is always a web of economic and political interests that play a crucial role. The attacks have raised many questions about how companies and governments directly benefited from the events, which has fueled the idea that the attack may have been, in some way, a catalyst for broader changes on the global stage. One of the most discussed areas is the connection between the Bush family and companies linked to the oil industry, especially Halliburton, an energy giant that had lucrative contracts with the United States government during the war in Iraq. Dick Cheney, the U.S. Vice President at the time, was CEO of Halliburton before taking office, which has raised suspicions about the connection between the attacks and the geopolitical consequences that followed. The idea that 9/11 was a pretext to justify a war in the Middle East, where U.S. oil interests are immense, is not new to conspiracy theories. Behind any major historical event, especially one as significant as 9/11, there is always a web of economic and political interests that play a crucial role. The attacks have raised
about
many
how
questions.
Companies and governments directly benefited from the events,
which has fueled the idea that the attack may have been, in some way, a catalyst for broader changes on the global stage. One of the most discussed areas is the connection between the Bush family and companies linked to the oil industry, especially Halliburton, an energy giant that had lucrative contracts with the United States government during the war in Iraq. Dick Cheney, the U.S. Vice President at the time, was CEO of Halliburton before taking office, which has raised suspicions about the connection between the attacks and the geopolitical consequences that followed. The idea that 9/11 was a pretext to justify a war in the Middle East, where U.S. oil interests are immense, is not new to conspiracy theories. Another important aspect of the 9/11 conspiracy theory is the silence of those who question the official version of events. Over the years, many journalists, academics, and even politicians have raised questions about the official narrative, but many have faced a wave of intimidation, marginalization, and even loss of reputation. This silence and fear of questioning the events of 9/11 is seen by many as an indication that there is more to the story than what has been officially presented. Documentaries and books that have challenged the official version, such as Loose Change and The New Pearl Harbor, have been widely disseminated, but have also faced resistance from official sources and major media corporations. Those who raise doubts about the traditional explanation are often labeled conspiracy theorists or extremes, which can alienate many from deeper discussion about what really happened that day. The pressure to accept the official version is so great that many choose to remain silent, fearful of the personal and professional repercussions. Furthermore, the issue of censorship is not limited to traditional media. The Internet has an open platform for debate, and discussion has become a space where conspiracy theories have flourished. However, big tech companies such as Google and YouTube have also been accused of censoring content that challenges the official narrative. This raises a fundamental question. If conspiracy theories are truly so unfounded, why is there such a massive attempt to silence these discussions? The fear of speaking out about 9/11 is not just a matter of personal conviction, but of a cultural and political environment in which questioning the official narrative can be risky. The history of silencing and repression of dissent in relation to 9/11 is therefore another piece of the puzzle that points to the complexity of this event. September 11th is undoubtedly one of the most traumatic and significant events in contemporary history. While the official version, promulgated by the U.S. government and global media, explains what happened clearly, questions about inconsistencies and possible hidden connections continue to grow. What we have been told about the attacks may be just one part of a much larger and more complex story. The fact that there are so many unanswered questions and the resistance to considering alternative theories raises a crucial question. Are we being truly informed, or are we being guided by a narrative that serves special interests? Throughout this video, we explore the structural flaws in the official explanation, the role of the media in constructing the narrative, the hidden connections between corporations and governments, and the attempts to silence those who dare to question it. While 9/11's conspiracy theories may not have all the answers, they serve as a reminder that we should never accept a single version of events without delving deeper into the many layers that make up the story. The truth can be hard to come by, especially when evidence is distorted or hidden, but it is our responsibility to keep asking questions and seeking answers. 9/11 changed the world forever, but the true story behind the events of that day is still being told, and we may never know all the details. Now it's your turn to reflect. What do you think? Does the official version of 9/11 make sense to you, or do you believe something else is being hidden? Leave your opinion in the comments below. Share this video with those who also seek to better understand this chapter of history. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, subscribe now to continue following investigations and discussions on topics that have shaped our world. Don't forget to like and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos. We're just beginning to explore the layers of truth that the world doesn't want you to see. See you in the next video.